Okay, so today we are going to be talking about lesson 7.3, which is the Pythagorean theorem. And before we get started on this, it's important that we identify the three sides of a right triangle, because the Pythagorean theorem only applies to right triangles. So what we have here is we marked our right angle, and if you draw a line and you go directly across from your right angle, that's going to be called your hypotenuse. Okay, so again, your hypotenuse is directly across from your right angle. And we're going to label that as C, and we'll explain why in a second. Then my other two sides are going to be my legs, and we're going to call them leg A and leg B. And just a little study tip for you, a little hint, or tip I should say, I guess, is that your legs, the length of your legs are always going to be smaller than the length of your hypotenuse. Your hypotenuse is always going to be the longest side, and that hypotenuse is always opposite your right angle. Okay, so now let's get started on the Pythagorean theorem. In any right triangle, again, it's important that we note that this is only in right triangles. The sums of the squares, let's write this, the sums of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. Okay, what does that look like in algebra? That is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. What does that mean just in layman's terms? That means that if we take one leg and square it, and we square the other leg and we add them together, that's going to equal the square of our hypotenuse. So here are our legs, and here is our hypotenuse. Okay, so let's see how that applies to an actual right triangle. So in example 1, find the length of the missing side. Show your work and circle your final answer. So here we can see that we have our hypotenuse opposite our right angle. So we're going to say, we're going to label this A. That can be my leg A and that can be my leg B. Whatever we call the legs, this could be B and that could be A. The legs are interchangeable, it doesn't matter. As long as we have our hypotenuse opposite our right angle. We're going to do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We have 15 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. Okay, we're going to go ahead and multiply those out. We're going to get 225 plus 64 equals C squared. I'm going to switch it around, just like I always tell my students, in a sentence you would never put the period at the beginning of the sentence. Well, in math you would never put the variable at the end. You're going to put it at the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and put C squared. That's good math practice. That's going to be what? 289. The inverse of squaring is taking the square root. And we're going to get C equals 17 feet. So our hypotenuse, that's my hypotenuse, let's label it that way, is 17 feet. Okay, let's do another one that's a little trickier. Not hard, just has some fractions that are actually hard to read, so let's do this. Let's label them. Let's call this A, this B, and we know the angle is our right angle. The opposite side is going to be our hypotenuse. They already labeled that C for us. So we're going to do A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're going to have 3/10 squared plus 2/5 squared equals C squared. Okay, now we just multiply it out. This is going to give me 9/100 plus 4/25 equals C squared. We know that when we add fractions, we have to have a common denominator. It's going to be 100. Multiply both top and bottom by 4 to get 100 on the bottom. Let's switch that around. C squared equals 25/100. Take the square root, and we get C equals 5/10. And we know that we have to simplify, so it's 1/2, and our label is inches. So my hypotenuse in this case is a 1/2 inch long, which makes sense because that's longer than my 2/5 and my 3/10, so we know the hypotenuse is the longest side. Okay? And if you wanted to fill that back in and check, you could do 2/5 squared plus 3/10 squared, and see if that actually, when you add those together, if it equals, what would be 1/2 squared? 1/4? Okay, you could do that if you wanted. Okay, let's flip the page. We are on example 2. Find the length of the missing length of the triangle. Okay, well, let's label our sides. Opposite my right angle, I have my hypotenuse. Then I have my leg B they've already labeled, so we'll label this one leg A. Okay, now we know the hypotenuse, but they want us to find one of the missing legs. Well, we're going to set it up the same way. We know that our Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fill in my a squared, which is 7. So 7 squared plus b squared equals 25 squared. Okay, so that's easy enough. Now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to multiply out. We're going to get 49 plus b squared equals 625. I know from when we solved equations that we're going to subtract 49 on both sides. Those cancel. We get b squared equals 576. Inverse operation of squaring something is taking the square root, do it to both sides, and we get b equals, you should know this, 24 feet. So my side leg, my leg B, is going to be 24 feet. Okay, why don't you pause the video now and try 2A through 2D on your own. Okay, you should have answers by now if you've paused the video and worked. We're going to go ahead and we're going to do this one. We're finding the missing length of the triangle. I'm going to label my sides opposite my right as my hypotenuse. They've labeled leg B, so I'll do leg A. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A squared would be 16 squared plus b squared equals 34 squared. Okay, that's how you set it up. We're going to multiply 16 squared. You should know this. It's 256 plus b squared. And 34 squared, you can do it on the side if you don't know, but I know it's 1,156. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 256 from both sides. I get b squared equals 900. Inverse operation of squaring something is taking the square root. I do it to both sides. If you do it to one, golden rule, you have to do it to the other. I get b equals 30 yards, which is my leg B. Okay, that's my leg B. Okay, 2B. Find the length of the missing length of the triangle. Again, I'm going to label my hypotenuse. It's opposite my right angle. I have leg A, I have leg B. So let's go ahead. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I've got my a squared, which is my unknown. My b squared is 9.6. I'm going to square that. Equals 10.4 squared. Okay. A squared. 9.6 squared. Some of you may know this already. If you don't, multiply on the side. It's 92.16 equals, and 10.4 squared is 108.16. I'm going to subtract 92.16 from both sides. I'm going to get a squared equals, oh nice, 16. Makes it a nice number, square root. And we get a equals 4 meters. So my leg A is going to be 4 meters. Okay? Let's go down to 2C. Now, this one is back to one of the first ones we did, where our missing side is actually our hypotenuse because it's opposite the right angle, and they call it x, which is completely fine. We can call it x. We now know that we're going to do leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So let's do that. We're going to get 9 squared plus 12 squared equals my hypotenuse, and they called it x, so we'll just call it x squared. 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144 equals x squared. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this around to my variables first, like we talked about. If we add those up, we get, what, 225. Take the square root, and we get x equals 15. And that's centimeters. So we know that the side that is the hypotenuse, opposite my right angle, is going to be 15 centimeters. Okay? Now, I'm going to pause for a minute because I need to switch to a new video.